that have survived.
In Celebration, Florida, we can see a town like this that is well underway. This town was made possible because Disney Development Corporation owned all the land and had a vision to design the ideal community of tomorrow. As it turned out, the ideal community of tomorrow looks an awful lot like the ideal town of yesterday.
My daily routine here in Celebration is the kids walk to school. We live about 5 houses down from the school. I walk on to work after school. My daughter walks over here to the store, hangs out with me for a couple of hours, and then we get to walk home together. We've done away with one of our cars, so we're a one-car family now.
It's a great place for kids. We feel very safe here. We feel like the bigger kids are looking after them. We feel like the other adults around know them.
You can't walk to downtown without seeing someone that you know. You can't sit on your porch and have your cup of coffee without going, oh, there's so-and-so, wonder what they're working on. Hey, what are you working on over there? There's truly a sense of community, and it's a very comfortable sense of community.
This is Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the richest farmland east of the Mississippi. For decades, traditional Amish and Mennonite farmers in Lancaster County have been getting pushed aside by development. At the same time, the city of Lancaster has been struggling to deal with the flight of wealth to the suburbs. Now, we've seen in Oregon how growth boundaries protect the countryside and revitalize towns. And we've seen in North Carolina how zoning laws can be changed to make it possible to build traditional communities once again. Why can't we apply these ideas here? Well, Lancaster County has been trying to follow the model of places like Portland and Davidson. But as in other parts of the country, antiquated land use laws get in the way.
We have established urban growth boundaries to separate the areas of the county that are appropriate for development from those areas that are not.
Okay, so what do we need to make these growth boundaries in Lancaster County or anywhere else in America really effective?
To be really successful in Pennsylvania, there are 3 things that we need to do. First, we need to change the laws that govern planning and zoning and taxing in the state, because these laws, as they exist today, encourage sprawl. We need to change the law to give the power to counties and municipalities to plan on a regional basis and to enforce growth boundaries. Secondly, we need to build traditional communities like they're building in other states. And finally, number 3, we need to encourage reinvestment in our existing cities and towns.
America has thousands of acres of land, strategically located, with needed infrastructure already in place, just waiting to be developed. It's all those abandoned factories and other vacant lands in our cities and towns. Hares Island, directly across the Allegheny River from downtown Pittsburgh, was for years derelict and polluted, the site of an abandoned meatpacking plant and scrapyard. Thanks to financing and tax incentives, it has been turned into a lovely residential and office development called Washington's Landing. But it's hard to imagine a less likely place to build a neighborhood than 9 Mile Run, a polluted stream running through a gigantic slag dump along the Monongahela River in Pittsburgh. From the 1920s to the 1970s, dozens of trainloads of slag from nearby steel mills were dumped here every day, creating 250 acres of hideous moonscape. The same Pittsburgh architects who helped design Celebration, Florida, have finished plans to transform this dump into thriving neighborhoods.
Not only are we reclaiming a brownfield site in a city, but what we're putting in its place is a great American neighborhood. One of the great inventions we've had in our country is the neighborhood, the American neighborhood, which is front porches and back alleys and streets and neighborhood parks and neighborhood schools. Those are things that exist in the United States. And here we have the example of a brownfield reclamation and a great new traditional American neighborhood coming together in one place and celebrating our diversity by making sure that people of all incomes could live in this neighborhood. But the big idea is the park that's going to be created right down here, 9 Mile Run, which is now a polluted stream. It's going to be transformed with the most current techniques for transforming streams and cleaned with new wetlands will be created. The slopes themselves, which you see now are unforested, will be forested with new techniques.
And we haven't even mentioned the environmental consequences of sprawl. Air pollution, groundwater contamination, even global warming.
The governor commissioned a study that worked for a year and produced a report that said, among other things, that suburban sprawl was the biggest threat to Pennsylvania's environment in the 21st century. The commission found that sprawl chews up farmland and open space, it destroys natural habitat for animals and plants, and it increases both air and groundwater pollution. Projects like 9 Mile Run are a big part of the solution to urban sprawl. They reuse land we've already developed, they clean up sites that are polluted, they reduce the pressure to develop farms and other open space, and they're good places to live.
There are reasons for optimism all across America. More than 20 states, from Maryland to Arizona, have begun efforts to curb sprawling development. Builders, environmentalists, and businessmen are finding common ground in a new concept called smart growth that concentrates development in and around existing towns and transportation corridors. Dozens of traditional neighborhoods, places like Celebration, are being built in rapidly growing areas like Florida and California. Elsewhere, they're being designed for vacant lands in existing cities and towns. And there's renewed interest in preserving the wonderful neighborhoods and main streets we already have. Public interest groups are also involved, and we'll list a few websites and phone numbers at the end of this program. But frankly, America will never save its cities, towns, and countryside as long as the dream home for most of us includes a half-acre lot in the countryside that's far from stores, schools, and jobs. Sure, sprawl seems natural to us because that's what we've known in our lifetimes. But in the whole sweep of recorded history, it's just been a couple of ticks on the clock. A recent experiment that's proving disastrous for America. Just look at where sprawl's brought us. We've neglected our cities and towns. We've turned beautiful landscapes into strip mall junkscapes. We've subdivided and paved over vast expanses of prime farmland. We've condemned ourselves to a wearisome life of constant driving. And perhaps worst of all, sprawl has helped to isolate us, black and white, rich and poor, and make us fearful of one another. That's no way to live, and it doesn't have to be that way. Going back thousands of years, from the days of the ancients to the medieval era, colonial times, right up to the 1950s here in America, the vast majority of people have lived in villages, in towns, in the neighborhoods of cities, because they make so much sense as a way of life. And it's not too late. We still have the ability to rediscover and rebuild our wonderful cities and towns.